in the end.
Well, you know how it goes when we talk about sequels here. The first game usually ends up being a success to the point where a company obviously wants to get more money of a newly successful IP. Sega was once again in that position with Crazy Taxi. Between the arcade and Dreamcast versions going over well, you knew a sequel was bound to happen sooner rather than later. Come November 2000, during Sega's Executive Games Summit, they announced that a sequel to Crazy Taxi, simply titled Crazy Taxi 2, was in development. They mentioned new locations, fixing certain issues, and they even mentioned some things that didn't quite make the final cut. These included new mission objectives and side quests in the main mode, online play, which only led to some DLC, leaderboards, and replay uploads given the gap between when it was announced and released, and a newer musical style that was harder compared to the first. Though, I know what you're thinking, how harder could you get given a choice of Offspring and Bad Religion in the first game? Well, you'll soon find out that's not really the case, but we'll get into that later on. The game was also likely to stay on the Dreamcast hardware as opposed to starting in arcades or even getting ported into arcades after its console release. As more information about the game came out, it was revealed to pretty much keep the same style that made the first game so iconic. On top of some gameplay and graphical enhancements, the game would shift its action to a whole new pair of cities within one, well, big new state. More media was revealed over the course of early 2001, showing off more of the game. Sega even had a competition in late March 2001 with the first game, which they also unveiled this game. Development seemed to go without any major hiccups, and the game reached its planned summer 2001 release. Crazy Taxi 2 was developed by Hitmaker, the same team behind the first, published by Sega, and it was exclusively released on the Dreamcast on May 13th, 2001 for Japan, 16 days later for North America, and July 6, 2001 for Europe. This is noteworthy because this is the last Crazy Taxi game for not just the Dreamcast, but Sega consoles in general, as the Dreamcast was discontinued 2 months before the game released. It also remained trapped on the Dreamcast until Crazy Taxi Fair Wars for the PSP came out, albeit with some serious compromises for the gameplay, technical, and presentation aspects. Even then, the Dreamcast version remains the superior way to play. Crazy Taxi 2 contains much of what made the first game so fun, with some new improvements, but the game's difficulty makes it less beginner-friendly compared to the first. Crazy Taxi 2 has 3 main modes of play like the original game. While in all fairness, it's the same style of gameplay for the first 2 modes, just on different maps. We have the Around Apple and Small Apple, the latter of which returned in Crazy Taxi 3. These new maps are based on New York. More on that in the graphics section. Crazy Box has been rebuilt from the ground up, though, as Crazy Pyramid. Instead of a 4x4 grid of challenges, they are arranged like a pyramid. The first row has 5 challenges, the second has 4, the third has 3, the fourth has 2, and the top row has you go around the entire Round Apple map, making drop-offs at all the places you can go to on the map. Completing that challenge unlocks the 16th and final challenge, which takes away your guide, arrow, and around, and makes you complete fairs in the Small Apple map in the fastest way possible. You know the drill. Once you accomplish these tasks, pick a map, and it's time to go make some crazy money once more with feeling. To reflect the change in scenery, the game introduces 4 new cabbies to select from, though they pretty much mirror how the cabbies in the original game were in terms of how they played. Slash is equivalent to Axel, Iceman is equivalent to BD Joe, Cinnamon is equivalent to Gina, and Hot D is equivalent to Gus, which means he's the best one to use once you really master the game. But I feel like I'd be retreading old ground by repeating what I mentioned in the last game's review, so I'll spare us the exposition. Just pick the driver that best plays to your strengths, and then go. Crazy Taxi 2 pretty much follows the same formula as the first. You'll go around picking up passengers and taking them to their locations. Get there in time to get a time bonus to extend your timer. Don't forget about the color system. Customers with a green circle around them often have the highest paying fares but the farthest distances. Light green is slightly closer but pays slightly less. Yellow is in the middle. Orange is closer distances but lower paying fares. And red pays the least amount but has the shortest fares. Regular customers aren't the only ones you can pick up now. New in this game are group passengers. You can pick up groups of 2, 3, or 4 passengers. If you drop them all off successfully where they need to go, you can get a big fat payday. The groups here include cheerleaders, rockabilly bands, afro dancers, and mimes. The other big new addition in the gameplay is the Crazy Hop. By pressing Y at any point, you can make your cab jump. You're going to need to use this quite a bit because the maps have a lot more high points that can lead to shortcuts. In fact, the whole maps here absolutely feel maze-like in their execution. The map design is something that I missed when covering the first game. I think mainly because the arcade map is not only very straightforward with regard to the gameplay, but there's enough space to do it all in. The second map is a bit tighter in some aspects since it's not really a circle in a way, kind of like the arcade map. But it's also not too bad to learn, and it's easier there to get a crazy license than it is on the arcade map. Unfortunately, I think Hitmaker took the wrong lessons from the original map from the first game and made more of the weaker aspects of that map present in both the round and small apple. You'll notice there's a lot more shortcuts that need the Crazy Hop to use, which I get why. You want to show off the new feature and everything. However, the slightest mistake can screw you up if you over or under hop where you need to go. It's more apparent here than in the first game because you can't adjust traffic and time settings. You're at Hitmaker's mercy, and they're saying, get good. Because the maps are more maze-like, that little arrow at the top of the screen that points to where you need to go isn't as effective. You're going to have to know all the shortcuts here. But the gameplay is still so damn good that you're probably going to want to keep playing for a better score, and you'll probably master these maps eventually. But getting an awesome rank, let alone a crazy rank, is going to be tougher. It doesn't help that the Crazy Dash does feel a bit more difficult to pull off here, which is actually a good segue into the next part. You know the drill here. You need to get to your locations fast and with big money. Once again, the controls are very good here. The same two control methods from the last game return. You can either use the triggers to brake and accelerate, and the face buttons to shift gears, or you can always use the face buttons to brake and accelerate, and the triggers to change gears. Regardless, Y is always used as the Crazy Hop button. If you played the first game enough, you'll pick up on all of this very quickly. Pretty much all of the same techniques to help boost your combos return here. Crazy through, crazy jump, crazy drift, and just for that extra boost of speed, Crazy Dash and the limiter cut. Thanks to the hop, you can now drift hop, which is cool. You'll quickly get used to many of these techniques, especially the hop, by playing through Crazy Pyramid mode. All inputs do work as they should, but some of the techniques don't quite feel as smooth as they did before. I guess that depends on the cabbie you use, but even then the Crazy Dash seems to have a tighter window to pull off. Or maybe that's the limiter cut, I'm not really sure, even with the default cabbies. And on top of that, drifting doesn't feel as tight as it does in the first game. It's too easier to spin in a circle, although you may need the crazy turn to get you out of a situation where you're facing the opposite direction of where you need to go. But with enough practice, you can get these down. Those going directly into this one without playing the first game will struggle more, but the controls are fine. One last thing I should mention here. When I went to Retropalooza Houston this year a while back, I actually played both Crazy Taxi and Crazy Taxi 2 on the Dreamcast they had set up in the game area, the free play console area. And I will say this much here. If you're playing with an actual Dreamcast controller, you're probably better off using the triggers to accelerate or whatever here. But if you're playing in emulation, which is what this footage is here, and you're using like an Xbox Series controller, you're probably better off using the face buttons to accelerate. Just some of my own other personal experience speaking from playing this in both emulation and on real hardware. The graphics here are pretty good. I would say they are slightly better than those in the first game. From a technical standpoint, the game still runs very smooth. Any minor technical issues like slowdown, very little mind you, are minimized to their lowest point, and the game runs at 60 frames per second very smoothly. There's also very little pop-in. Well, there is still some, but it's very minor. Technically, this game performs as it should, which is good because there's a lot more going on visually. You have a lot taller and closely packed buildings to resemble New York City. on top of all the other areas that are recreated well enough in the game. Like sort of that Central Park-like area as well, parts of Brooklyn as well. And yeah, it very much has its own different flair going on here. And I think Hitmaker was very successful in bringing a lot of the familiarity of New York to both of these maps here. There's also more traffic as well to make the roads more dense and tougher to navigate. The buildings are well rendered, even better looking than the first game's buildings with smoother looking textures. Even the traffic cars look smoother. Other environmental objects like bridges and fences look good, and the game on the whole looks well, though some things like foliage aren't as sharp, but this is only a minor hiccup. Once again, like the last game, this game offers real-world locations to drop your passengers off at. The Gap Clothing Store, Toy Store FAO Schwartz, Technology and Physical Media Shop, and that's for movies, games, and music, HMV, Hard Rock Cafe, and Burger King. A very interesting selection with brands that once again, some are still relevant today, and some are of their time, and some really feeling New York specific like FAO Schwartz. Character models also exhibit that same attitude and punk look like the first game did. Slash's open red shirt and fingerless gloves, Hot D really bringing that hip grandpa look to life, Iceman's chilled out look with only his pants and shoes, Cinnamon's spunky look and personality, and they just all fit here. And like I said, the personalities equally match here as well. Customer models here, though, seem very derivative from their West Coast counterparts, with some even making the voyage over. The group passengers do add some variety, and there are some new customer models here. Overall, despite some minor flaws, we have a good-looking game. Well, the sound is also really good here. Once again, the music is on point. It feels like the talk Sega had in the build-up for this game having a harder musical style was just PR talk, because the Offspring returned once again for the in-game music. From Americana, we have No Brakes and Walla Walla, with the titular track's opening drum line serving as the menu music. From Conspiracy of One Fine Day, and for the game's main theme, Come Out Swingin'. Well, Methods of Mayhem, the band that Tommy Lee had when he was gone from Motley Crue for a bit, has a couple songs that are modified for use here. The opening loop of Who the Hell Cares serves as the character select theme, and an instrumental version of Crash is used for the credits. The Offspring songs still kick ass, though the Methods of Mayhem songs might divide people. But this probably isn't a big deal since they are modified versions. The sound effects pretty much sound similar to those heard in the first game. Sounds when you do a crazy maneuver like drifting or dodging through traffic, car crash sounds, timer sounds, it's all very similar. The hop does have a nice little oomph once your car goes up in the air, which is nice. Still, it does feel like a good chunk of it is recycled. What isn't recycled is the voice acting. Pretty much most of it comes from the new characters and customers. The most standout voice here is Alan Jay, who voices Slash. He's also done work for Top Skater and Ferrari F355 Challenge. He's the most Japanese-sounding American out there, and that accent really shows even though the English is strong here. But the other cabbies, they do sound fine. The customers here also now sound entirely different from the first game. The Caucasian females now sound like Amy Rose's original voice actress, Jennifer Doolard, even though I'm pretty sure that's Lyle Wilkerson doing it because she's the one who's credited. And African American females now sound like Francie from Arthur, even though Jodie Rester didn't do the work. It's just a hell of a coincidence, and more than likely, I'm pretty sure it's, if I could just see the name here. Apologies, yeah. Mibu Minami, Cinnamon's voice actress, likely was the one doing it here. So, yeah. And the Caucasian males also sound a bit more whinier, and I'm just not the biggest fan of them here. They're serviceable. It also doesn't help that these newer voices for the customers replace the older voices in later Crazy Taxi 1 releases. And the same thing with the original cabbies, which are unlockable here, sans Axel's voice, because, well, once again, if I could just find it, Brian Burton Lewis here returns once again as the system voice, so yeah. And oh yeah, the original cabbies are unlockable here. once you beat all of Crazy Pyramid. And in addition to them, you can unlock a bike, a stroller to use in-game, and 2 maps for the Around and Small Apple. So there's actually more meat on the bone here, and that's not counting the website, which you can browse even still to this day, thanks to talented people who brought it back. This allows for leaderboards, replays, browsing game information, and you can get another day mode, which makes things more difficult. Yeah, remember when you could browse sites on the Dreamcast? Yeah, those were the days. Man, how things have evolved over the years. And one last thing before we go ahead and wrap this up. I find it kind of annoying, too, how Lyle Wilkerson voiced Gina in the original game, and yet even though she still did voiceover work for Crazy Taxi 2, they opted to not use her voice work from the first game here. And it's just a very, kind of nitpick, maybe, but I just find that kind of annoying. Oh, and by the way, Alan Jay's brother, Chris Pepler, actually, voices Gus here in Crazy Taxi 2, and yeah. Kind of a hell of a thing, but why don't we go ahead and just wrap this up here. Crazy Taxi 2 delivers much of what made the original so good. It looks good, sounds good, plays well, and it has the same addicting pick-up-and-play nature that made the original game so damn addicting to go back to. Plus, more bonus content to unlock on top of all the internet features will really keep players coming back. However, some minor tweaks with handling and other things, combined with more difficult and confusing map layout, does make this one more difficult to even get an S ranking in. On top of voice acting for the customers and returning cabbies that would replace the original in Crazy Taxi 1's later ports not being as good, and the game also kind of has trouble reinventing the wheel, which I guess is to be expected. But the more time I spend with these maps, the more frustrated I get. I can see why many people kind of skip over this one, but I still think you shouldn't skip the game itself. There is still plenty of fun to be had, but I think it's a bit of a step back from the first in some aspects. Still, it's a fine game. I give Crazy Taxi 2 a 4 out of 5. With that, there's only one last shot to make some crazy money. Stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Click subscribe below and check out the playlist on screen for more content. To help support the show beyond the usual means, check out my Patreon and Ko-fi on the link tree in the description. And come by my Twitch where I conquer my backlog one game at a time. See you in the next video.